Good to go? Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this Board of Ed meeting. The emergency is in the rear, the right, and the left. Kelly, will you call the roll, please?
Robert Toman,
Here.
James Mooney,
Present.
William Ball,
Here.
Krista Barringer, here, Christine Bellarosa, here, Susan Gage, here, Raymond McClary,
Here.
Scott Polston, Timothy Wells.
Please rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask for a motion to amend the agenda to go into executive session. Motion by Mr. Mooney. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Bellarosa. Any discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're going to go into a brief executive session, and then we will come out and resume the rest of the meeting. I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gage, second by Mr. Wall. Any discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion for item B1, approval of the minutes of January 10th. Moved by Mr. Mooney, is there a second? Second by Ms. Gage. Any discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Student rep reports, Ms. Earhart.
Recently, the math team made it to the next level, and 5 students will be competing at Vassar on March 8th. Science Olympiads had an amazing meet on Saturday. They are going to the state championships on March 17th and 18th in Syracuse. There was a well-attended meeting for 9th grade parents interested in the science research class. Our senior high snowball dance will be Friday, March 3rd from 6 to 9. The school's musical, which is Into the Woods, is March 17th through 19th, Friday at 7, Saturday at 7, and Sunday at 2. The senior high CVP students created a video of the summary of events going on within the high school.
Great. Are we able to bring that, go to the desktop?
Ms. Reinhardt?
Thank you. Is this working or no?
Rocco, can we
I
put
just have a
that,
couple quick
that video
updates
on?
for Mr. Reed. Our Science Olympiad update. The Saugerties participated in the Mid-Hudson Regional Science Olympiad on February 4th at John Jay. The team ranked 5th and will be moving on to the state competition March 17th and 18th. Update on winter sports. The wrestling team won the Section 9 dual meet tournament. Competed at the New York State Tournament on January 28th. The varsity team also won the Division II championships. They came in 2nd overall at the section tournament. They had 10 wrestlers placed. I apologize if I mispronounced the names wrong. Christian Hawk 1st, Gavin Ingracia 2nd, Vance Dyke 2nd, Isaiah Hawk 2nd, Jack Bucci 2nd. Our girls wrestling, as you know, is growing rather quick. We're the fastest growing sports in New York State. Savannah Tittleback placed 6th at the New York State Tournament. Meredith Mills 1st, Jillian Mills 2nd, and Kyra Keliak, I apologize if I said that wrong, placed 3rd. Great job by our girls wrestling team. And I think that's going to be, is that going to be a full team sport next year, Scott? I think so. We hope so, the numbers. Bowling, on Monday, both the boys and girls won the section championships. They'll be heading to the New York State Tournament in March. And the girls basketball team qualified for sections, and we're just waiting to hear what their seed is going to be. And as far as the Mahal Scholar Academic team, we had 31 total, representing our boys basketball, bowling, cheerleading, wrestling, and girls basketball. So our students are doing some amazing stuff, and we're very proud.
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. So, good evening, everyone. As you know, tonight I'm going to be presenting. We got a couple of things in store for you. The first thing that we'd like to show you is a pretty great video that was created by our CVP department. Some of them are here tonight. And they made this video specifically for you to give an overview of the first semester of our school year. Can you turn that up a little?
Good evening, Sawyers, and welcome to this special edition of Sawyer News. I'm Amelia Dornell.
And I'm Madge Marico. Thank you for tuning in to our Semester in Review special, where we'll look at special events, student achievements, club activities, and a sports wrap-up. The school year started strong with the annual Sawyer Pep Rally. Here are Bridget and Ava Slater with their report.
This year's pep rally was held out on the football field and was hosted by class president Sean Sakan. There were student games and a faculty and staff tug-of-war game. The band and chorus both provided music throughout. At the end, Lucia Vasquez was announced as Mum Queen.
At the pep rally, the student body learned who the senior class voted to be the Mum Queen and her court. These Sawyers were selected by their peers based on who they feel are smart, confident, strong, talented, accomplished, principled, commanding, and impactful.
Every year we have our annual Mum Ball. This year many people wore pink to the game for breast cancer awareness. During halftime, the Mum Queen and her court were crowned. The following day, they attended the annual Mum Festival.
This fall also saw the appearance of a weekly Spanish phrase of positivity. Each week, Mrs. Elia in the language department shares a Spanish phrase of positivity on the morning announcements. Faculty and staff can print and post the slides in their classrooms, share the words with their students, and post them in the hallways as positive reminders to students to promote bilingualism. Students have so many activities to participate in throughout the year, it can get pricey if you want to do it all. So student government and student council host several fundraisers throughout the year to help students earn money to put towards their yearbook, proms, and the annual New York City and Disney trips. In the fall, they held a clothing donation and Krispy Kreme donut sale. During the winter, they host a weekly Dunkin' Cocoa sale and just completed an event sponsored by our local Meltaway Cookies. Rowan Johansson has more news about this year's Sawyer yearbook.
On June 1st, the new yearbook for the class of 2023 will be released. The new edition includes a wide range of senior superlatives, such as most athletic to most likely to stay in Saugerties, as well as some entertaining ones, such as likely to be late to graduation and most likely to save the planet. Credit for photography and editing goes to Natalie Vale and Jillian Lopez, including advisor for Ms. Jones.
The annual Star Party was held in November with members of the Mid-Hudson Astronomical Association who shared their powerful telescopes to see the moon, planets, stars, constellations, and the Milky Way. Our Science Olympiad team has been remarkably successful under the leadership of Ms. DeFino. Elizabeth Lee has more on the great success this semester of the Sawyer Science Olympiad.
The Saugerties Science Olympiads team blew us away this past November in their competition at Columbia High School, where they took 9th place overall out of 35 of the state's best teams. Team members Zachary Feinberg and Becky Lee won 2nd place in It's About Time, and Zachary Feinberg and Ian Vickery claimed 1st place in the Scrambler. The team's next tournament at John Jay High School is state qualifying. Wish them luck, although they probably won't need it.
Sawyers contribute to the Saugerties community in many ways. One way students help other students is through Key Club's backpack program.
Saugerties Key Club's backpack program has been having a very great year this year, thanks to generous donations by Sawyer Motors owner Bob Circusano.
This year, Sawyer Motors, through the Sawyer Foundation, provided grants to several SHS programs. Here with more is Pal Patel.
The Educational Innovation Grants aim to fund diverse, innovative, and joyful learning experiences for students at Saugerties High School. Mr. Cooper was awarded $650 for a Saugerties Business Department logo competition. Ms. DeFino was awarded $1,000 for a makerspace. Ms. Hayes was awarded $1,750 for the Sawyer Film Festival. Maren Musgrave and Ms. Ortley were awarded $5,000 for the Score Store.
With more information about the Score Store, here's Anna Dreyer.
Maren Musgrave, founder of the Score Store, created this store so that families can get clothes, food, hygiene products, and more all for free. Right now, the Score Store is accepting formal wear donations for upcoming dances. If you have well-loved formal wear you no longer want, please consider donating it to the store.
Ulster Prevention Council held a media contest directed at reducing substance abuse, and sophomore Chloe Turner won 1st place in the county for her creative and informative video about the negative effects of marijuana on young people.
The music department at SHS continues to impress. Gilbert Hartram has more about their activities.
Several members of the senior high school band and choir participated in community events, from playing the national anthem at sporting events and Mum Festival to playing music for the Monday Club Holiday in the Village. On December 18th, a winter choral concert conducted by Miss McDougal performed Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy and other songs. The senior high school wind ensemble performed Nutcracker as well as other holiday songs conducted by Mr. Chung.
There's something for everyone at SHS, and Sawyers have been busy in their extracurricular activities all year. Here's Anna Peterson.
Saugerties High School has many clubs for students to participate in, including American Sign Language Club, where students learn sign language and about deaf culture, Drama Club, which is preparing for the musical Into the Woods, French Club, where students participate in French cooking demonstrations and learn about French culture and play French games, Japanese Animation and Culture Club, where students celebrate Japanese customs and events and do other anime-themed activities, and so many more.
Sawyers are going places, and Anna Kozlowski has more on that.
This year, students have been on plenty of field trips to help them better understand specific topics they are studying in certain classes. Ms. Jones took her English class to Salem, Massachusetts to get a better understanding of the history of the Salem witch trials. Ms. Hayes took CBP students to Syracuse University to learn about careers in media. Miss Grandstaff and Miss Rabideau took creative writing students to the Dodge Poetry Festival that only occurs once every 2 years. Students have also gone pumpkin picking with Miss Tucci, gone to the Trevor Zoo with Mr. Perpetua, and to Stockport with Mr. Robinson.
This year, Sawyer sports are looking strong. The girls' basketball team started with 2 big wins to take first in the Shane Geiser tournament. The record right now is 5-4. The boys' basketball team had a rocky start to their season and have a present record of 2-7. Our boys' wrestling team is having a great season. They recently won sectionals and will be attending the state meet in Syracuse in February. And the new girls' wrestling team seems to have had a strong start as well, with multiple big wins this season. Lastly, our boys and girls bowling teams are having great seasons with a 5-3 record and a 6-2 record. We are very proud of our winter sports athletes and can't wait to see how far they go this season. We are also very proud to announce 95 fall M Hall athletes with a 90 or greater average at Saugerties High School, as well as multiple college commitments. Congratulations to Molly Boak on her commitment to Mercy College for basketball, Maddie Dodig on her commitment to Binghamton University for softball. Congratulations to Riley LeMay, who committed to Wilson College, and Leah McDougall, who committed to Roberts Wesleyan, both for lacrosse. Jace Van Valkenburg on his commitment to Herkimer for baseball, and I'm really excited about my own commitment to Fairleigh Dickinson University for soccer.
That's all for your evening special edition of Sawyer News.
Thank you for tuning in to our Saugerties High School semester in review. Have a great evening and make it a great evening for someone else.
Yes. Thank you. So again, a brief overview of some of the things that we've done so far in the high school. I'd like to introduce Ms. Jamie Heilman. She is one of our new guidance counselors and the department chair of guidance.
Hello, so my name is Jamie Heilman. I am one of the 9th grade counselors as well as the department chair this year. I do have a few counselors here, so I would just like you to get a face to the name when I go through them. We did have a little bit of movement and we have some elementary schools that we covered, so just let you know. So we have Eric Schwartz, he's 6th grade at Riccardi and our 7th grade here. Melissa Chahanovich is 8th grade and she goes to Cahill. Ms. Kara Strapoli, who is here, she is our 7 through 12 ENL counselor, as well as some 9th grade. She has letters I through M. Then we have myself, I have the 9th grade A through H and N through Z. We have Miss Eileen Madden, who is our 10th grade. Seth Toman is here, behind there. He has our 11th grade as well as Gracie Morris. And then Dr. Catalano, who is our 12th grade, and I'm sorry you can't see it because that is in our way. Just a few things just to kind of get us to know us. There are a lot of us that are new. We do a lot that are outside our roles as a counselor just to get to know our students better. Some of them being the Habitat for Humanity, a few of us coach and volunteer, the Score Store being one of them. Which is a really great opportunity for us to see our students in a different light and help them out as well. Strength in Numbers Club, we advise a couple clubs such as Yoga Club and Key Club, and we're on a couple different committees as well. I just kind of wanted to put up here a year at a glance, just some of the bigger things that we have done so far this year. So in the beginning of the year, in the summer, it's a lot of making sure the schedules are set and that students' schedules are the way that, the best that we can get them anyways until they get here. We meet with new students. We also meet with some new teachers, make sure that they're all set. We hosted the PSAT, the pre-ACT. We also prepare for the regents that were in January, making sure our students are on track to graduate. And then most recently we were doing the semester changeover with half-year classes. And then a few of our daily duties. I also have a handout for you guys. We do a lot throughout the day, so I did just kind of want to give you a brief overload. There are some days where we do, thank you, all the things on these papers. Some of them being, we have weekly meetings with teachers and admin. We're always consulting and collaborating with people in the building, whether it's the nurses or TAs. We do crisis management and academic planning, classroom lessons, schedule changes, all the way to program management and our comprehensive school counseling plan, making sure that that's up to date each year as well. So if you guys do have any questions, my email is online, or you can call me anytime too. I'd love to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Heilman.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to start just a little bit of review of last year and some of the successes we had. We set some goals last year. We reached our 90% graduation rate. We increased the number of college credits to 60 college credits last year that are offered here at the high school. We now have 11 AP classes. I hope to even push that even higher. We have new electives at the senior high, and we also, one of our goals was that sense of belonging here. And we did a survey, and we went from 25 to 76%. So where do we go from here? We're going to continue the previous strategies that we've used. We're going to measure, we're going to reflect, and we're going to adjust and continue to improve things here at the high school. The goal this year that we set with the BLT, the building leadership team, is to set a graduation rate of 92% for our graduation rate. We're going to continue to use previous strategies, weekly at-risk meetings with our guidance counselors and support staff, using data to identify needs of students, tracking progress and interventions, and working with a credit recovery coach to explore opportunities to get students back on track. We now have a ninth grade, our at-risk ninth grade students are teamed, thanks to an idea that Ms. Vale had presented about teaming those ninth grade students and then having a grand rounds approach for those students. So she collaborated with me, and we're now meeting the needs of those students in a much more intimate sort of way at the high school. Creating a designated space for the Sawyer Credit Connection, which is, sometimes we call it the APEX program. We've moved that into a quieter area of the building, and we're training more teachers in that program so that they can help students. We've also reached out to former dropout students to explore options about coming back. This year we have 2 students that have returned from being dropped that are working on their high school diplomas daily. For special education, that's another area that sometimes impacts our graduation rates. We want to make sure that we're always looking at, we're doing everything we possibly can for our special ed students. We've added instructional skills classes, which is a class that I presented to you a couple of years ago. We ran it last year at the 12th grade level. We're running it every grade level now. It's a credit-bearing program for special education students. It's offered at every grade. It's offering supports not only for their classes, but it also has a curriculum that's paralleled with some of the things that they're learning in other classes. We're creating a system to track CDOS, which is a credential for students, and we have support teams that will review the CDOS needs for students. CDOS is an opportunity for special ed kids who may not be able to pass a Regents exam. When we do this career development credential, it allows us sometimes to look beyond the Regents exam, and those students can be presented with a superintendent's determination to get a high school diploma. So we're really trying to intensely look at that so that every student has an opportunity to graduate from our high school. Another area that we're focusing a lot on is our ENL students. The creation of an ENL guidance position, which is Mr. Pauly. The creation of an ENL teaching assistant. It's a teaching assistant that we share in the junior and senior high that goes and helps ENL students. She's bilingual, and she assists them in classes that the ENL teacher's not able to push into. Creation and implementation of a weekly program to teach Spanish to teachers. You heard a little bit on that video. but every week, Miss Elia is presenting a small short lesson to teachers on speaking Spanish, and she does that on a weekly basis, and that's been quite a success. Additional English instruction for ENL students. So we've met with Rosetta Stone. It's a company that you often hear about. You can buy like CDs to learn different language. Well, they have an actual program that they use in schools that we purchased. And we're using that for ENL students who have a study hall to do additional English, learning English language on top of their English classes. So goal number 2. So the goal number 1 was graduation rates. Goal number 2 is Regents outcomes. By June of 2023, students in classes leading to Regents exams will have a framework with supports to increase Regents scores by 3%. It's a little more complicated than that, but I want to, so let me start off by answering this question. Why are we looking at the Regents exams? It's a common benchmark that the state uses to compare schools. It's a required element to receive a high school diploma, and we're using it as a tool to identify gaps in our instruction. So we often, when we look at the Regents, we often break down those scores in questions to identify areas in our curriculum that students have misconceptions about. So we use that data to help improve instruction. At the end, I will talk a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit more about this goal, but one of the things, it's sort of like a good news and maybe not necessarily bad news, but what we need to work on. The good news is in most areas of our Regents scores, we're doing very well here. Particularly in ELA, we have a 92% proficiency. The state average is 81%. I'm sure it's been shared with you by Mr. Reinhardt, but I want to just mention that our ELA scores are top in the county, and we are in the top 25% in the state. We're doing very well overall on our English scores. But when I break down the data, it tells a different story for some of our subgroups. So I'm always looking at that lens of equity. How are our subgroups doing? What are the gaps, and where do we need to put more attention on to make sure that all of those students have the same opportunity to be successful on the test? So our special education is at a 60% proficiency. That's 24% lower than our average proficiency here. Our Hispanic population is doing relatively close to our general ed students or the overall scores, and our multiracial is a little bit lower, and our economically disadvantaged is pretty close. I broke it down mostly by English and algebra because those are the two big gateways in that Regents exams. So for algebra, our proficiency is at 66%. The state proficiency is at 66%. And this is an area that we certainly want to improve our scores in. Particularly, for 2021, our special ed students were at a 34% proficiency on that exam, and that it's a 32% gap between our average and those specific students. So that's an area that we're going to be targeting. Hispanic is pretty close. Multiracial did very well on that, and our economically disadvantaged were about 5% lower than the rest of our students. So again, I'm using this data to help inform and make decisions about what improvements and supports we're going to put in for these students. Overall living environment, I'm not going to go through all this data because it'll be shared with you. But living environment, Saugerties has an 84% proficiency. The state average is 74, so again, we're significantly above the state average. Global, we were at 89%, the global history exam. The average was at 80%. Again, a very similar story with our special ed students being 24% lower than our average student. So again, we know this is something that we have to target, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do. So what we've already started this year for algebra is we're offering what's called a Graphing Calculator Fundamentals course to improve the utilization of technology on the Algebra Regents exam. It's a course that students take in conjunction with Algebra 1 so that they have an extra, it runs every other day, so they have extra time to work on learning to use the graphing calculator in the context of the algebra exam, and they get a credit for that. We are going to be measuring that data this year to see how much help that's actually been to our students, and we're optimistic that we're going to see improvement on our scores. We're going to offer Regents review sessions during the week leading up to the exam, additional dual language supports for ENL students in algebra and science, teachers conducting item analysis from the Regents to identify trends of things that we might not be covering enough that are coming up on the Regents exams, utilizing common professional periods for Regents course collaboration, so teachers working together on their instruction, developing and improving writing templates for literary responses, so the English department is always analyzing how they do on the exams and constantly improving their instruction, collaborating, working together to making sure that students are really prepared for this exam. Continue to create uniform language across grade levels for reading and writing tasks, and that's something that's happening here at the junior and senior high. Our English departments are working together, so vertically, so that there's some consistency for students by the time they take that Regents. Incorporating more speaking and debate into curriculum in earlier grades, using simplified Regents rubrics to get students familiar with what those expectations are, collecting review materials in Spanish for our ENL students. And I know I feel like I'm talking really fast. So what makes a great school? So this is something that goes back to why the Regents, and I kind of explained that. I do want to tell you that I truly believe in a philosophy that there's much more to a great school than graduation rates and Regents exams. A really great school is about the culture in the building. It's about the culture between staff and students. It's about stakeholders being involved in decision making. And I'm always looking at trying to balance that lens out between following the metrics and the data. But there is something kind of intangible sometimes that's difficult to measure about a successful school. And I think that's really, really important that I just comment on that. And you see a little bit of that in that video. It's not always about what's happening directly in that instructional classroom. It's about all the other things that are surrounding the students. And I think it's really important that we're always looking through that lens of what we're doing here also, and find that balance between, again, graduation rates, Regents exams, and creating a school that we're proud to send our children to, where they're not only are they being prepared, but they're being fed just enriching experiences that make them better people. So I do want to say that's very important to me. And that brings me to new course proposals. So I want to thank everybody here for the past 3 years. You've been extremely supportive with some of the ideas that we've had for courses. We have some new courses for you to consider. I'm going to outline a few of them tonight. And I appreciate that support. And I'm going to continue to present courses that are based on what feedback from student surveys, what they want. Because I think that, again, we create coursework that students are interested in and that meet their needs. We're going to fill classes and we're going to continue to grow. So one of the electives that we're presenting tonight is the American Sign Language elective. That'll be a half-credit course, and we'll run it twice, once for each semester. We have a huge interest in our ASL club, so this was a natural next step. Principles of Science and Technology is also being presented tonight for your consideration. It is think of it as a class that creates and makes things under the guidance of a science teacher. It's engineering, it's technology, It's very much in line with the philosophy of Science Olympiads. So we have such a huge interest in that, in Science Olympiads. This was a natural class that seemed to follow those interests. AP Psychology was a course that was presented, that I got a lot of feedback last year when I ran the survey. And we're hoping to run that for students this year. Right now, we currently have 2 sections of Psych 1 and Psych 2 that are usually there's a waiting list to get into them. Entrepreneurship is a business course that's being presented. It's literally creating a business from the ground up and everything that it takes to do that. Astronomy is a half-year science course that had a huge amount of interest in it last year on the survey. We'd like to try running that. And extreme weather would be the other side of that course in the next semester. And again, another one that we got a lot of feedback from students they were interested in. Now, all of these, we may not be able to run all of these courses each year. What we'll do is students will have the option of letting us know what they're interested in. And then if we have enough interest level to open these sections, we will. And our catalog is growing. We're now going to have to get to the point where some classes will run them every other year. So that those opportunities are being offered to students at least twice while they're in high school. More successes and works in progress. We've been working hard on the Seal of Civic Readiness, which is another seal that's offered in New York State for graduating seniors. PBL work was which is project-based learning. Many of our teachers have started embedding project-based learning into their classes. We had a very intense training for five of our teachers in San Diego, and they're bringing back and they're cross-training the teachers in our building on project-based, which is research-driven, successful way of not only teaching but assessing student learning. I presented the new courses. We of course have the Score Store, which you're going to get a personal invite from Maren to go check out. I think at the next board meeting she had to work tonight, so we'll give you an invitation prior to the board meeting if you'd like to check that out and see what's going on with that. And I'm hoping to create even more special opportunities for our special ed education kids. I'm meeting with our special ed teachers to go over a couple of ideas that I hope to have presented to you before the end of the year. And at that moment, I apologize for talking so fast, but I know it was a bit long-winded. Thank you. I'm very proud of the work that my staff and students are doing in this building, and I wanted to share as much of it with you as I possibly could. So, no, that's never a good sign.
Time's up.
Does anyone have any questions for me?
I just want to thank you. It's a very comprehensive presentation, and seeing the changes in the high school from when I first came on the board, I think it was 11 years ago, to now, it's just great. It's great to see the options for kids. It looks like regardless of a kid's abilities, there's something to meet every child's need here. And I think that's the way for those kids to reach their potential. To me, one of the things about making the school great is, can everybody reach their potential, and can they go out to be successful beyond high school? And I think you're doing a great job. You and your staff to be commended.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Kristen.
So yes, I agree. Things are really exciting. I love all the new things that we've brought in. I have a few questions, so please bear with me. The first is regarding the guidance presentation. Thank you for the wonderful overview. At one point, there was a discussion of having our guidance counselors follow the class. Is there a discussion? Are we looking, because right now we have our senior guidance counselor. My understanding is the goal was to have all of them.
Krista, I can answer that, and you're correct. And so it's hard to show that on a slide, but Dr. Catalano had juniors last year. He has seniors this year. Next year, more than likely, he'll have 9th grade. And each one of the counselors will move with their students, and purposely, so that they begin to really get to know their students and the supports that their students need.
Wonderful, yes, because there's an understanding that it's a growth and a development of understanding of what they're going to need by the senior year. So I'm so thrilled to hear that. Also, along those lines, the data from, there's such a wealth of information that is being provided by the guidance counselors in what we do, but to know, we are a data-driven society, we are a data-driven board, so to know how well is Naviance being used, how much content is being received by students, are they accessing the program, it's a great resource, are we getting the content delivered, are the kids going to the PSATs, how many are passing the PSATs, what is the percentage that are then going on for their SATs, and how, that kind of data to let us know where are we? Because, and I'll be honest, and I'm going to put it right out there, publicly, and I've said this before, I have a huge interest that somewhere down the line, we as a district start providing SAT as one of the assets that we provide to all students. I mean, I'm not hiding that. It's not something that any parent, any child should have to try to figure out is SAT programs and college applications. I've done it 3 times, and I don't wish that on any parent ever. So anything we can do to help make that happen. So along those lines, when we talk about college credits and AP classes, when we started seeing the re-look at Saugerties, and we put a huge amount of emphasis on our high school and putting in more programming and totally support everything that's happening there, but what's the percentage of kids' grades on those classes? How many are getting APs? And when they get their APs, how many of them are using them at their colleges? How many are getting them applied and actually seeing a benefit from that? Those are as we keep growing and keep expanding and keep making this happen, what's the impact is what I guess I'm looking for. We were a part of building and adding in all those new positions and adding in all those. What's the impact now? So beyond just the increase, where we.
Now I'm taking some notes, Krista, and at a minimum, we can do another presentation to answer some of those questions. All right, but right, Jake.
I just wanted to show you an overview too, just like some of the stuff, so I'll gladly.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm so excited. Okay. Please know that all this has done is generated a whole bunch of, oh my God, I'm so excited, I want to hear more. Makerspace, what? Tell me more. That just sounds so exciting. I know about, and we've had a lot of presentations on project-based learning, and I know project-based learning is not one class with one project. And I know that there is so much more involved, and I can't wait to see some more of that really strong project-based learning come out of Saugerties, and where it's bringing the whole district together.
When we get to the point where we start doing exhibitions, because that's part of the process, we'll make sure that you're all invited to that process.
Wonderful. Yeah. So that's all for my questions. I just know that I'm really excited. I'd just like to hear more of the impact of all that you're doing.
Great. Any other questions?
Just one. First a comment. I always think it's great when the kids present and the kids are involved. They're taking ownership and they're finding their place, and I think that's great. You had mentioned that you had reached out to a couple kids who had dropped out and you got them to come back in.
Yeah.
Now, I know you did that last year as well, right? So my question is this. How successful?
It varies. It really does. It varies. Last year I was able to get one. This year I have 2 students coming back. One is already, his cohort has graduated. We're not going to get, it's not going to be a win in terms of our graduation rates. It's about him getting to a place where he's ready to come and do the work, and getting that high school diploma has a lot more value. Didn't have the same value for him last year, but every kid's story is different. We had a student, an ENL student, that came back from dropping out last year that was quite successful. It's an interesting, there's no, the results and the approach are different for every kid, but I always go through all the kids that have dropped out. We reach out, we ask, we tell them about our programs, and we invite them to come back and re-engage.
And thank you, and I mean, that's awesome. And to address a comment that Trustee Barringer made about the AP credits, I can just tell you within my household, my daughter earned 18 AP credits, and she started college as a sophomore. So if anybody goes to a SUNY school, that's like 30 grand. So it's a huge windfall for us, but for other kids who, college might not have been on the horizon, I think it's very achievable. I mean, 60 credits, that's an associate's degree, right? So
I challenge every student to get as many of those credits as they can.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Reed. I appreciate seeing the new proposals for courses because I think one of the oftentimes a statistic that is not really looked at often enough is with regard to scheduling, the highest percentage of students getting into the highest percentage of classes that they desire to take. Right. And the impact that that has on their own success, right? There's a little bit of meta stuff going on there once we hit this high school level. So seeing the number of opportunities and realizing sometimes you're not going to be able to run them, sometimes you will. But if we're getting those kids, again, the highest number of students and the highest number of courses that they desire, it simply stands to reason that we're going to see success, with that in mind. So I appreciate that.
I believe in that. I agree with you. And another philosophy that I have, even including the AP psychology class, every one of those classes will be open to every one of our students. So the idea is to create, with the idea that we're going to differentiate, but we're going to offer that we believe that the opportunities that they're going to get in these classes are so important that every student should be able to have access to them.
Thank you for anticipating the next question.
All right. Great. Thank you, everyone. Again, I appreciate your time. If you have any specific questions, I'm always happy to answer, and I'll also start working on some of those questions, Crystal, with Jamie, and we'll start looking into that. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, sir.
Next on the agenda is public recognition. Any member of the public wishing to speak on items on the agenda tonight, please approach the podium, state your name and residence, and feel free to speak.
Good evening. My name is Amy Mills. I live at 54 Dooley Drive. This is my daughter Jillian Mills, and this is her teammate Joelle Luke. So I stood here a year ago on the 50th anniversary of Title IX and told you about the accomplishments of Our Lady Sawyer wrestlers during their 2021-2022 season. I'm standing here today to give you an update on how girls wrestling has grown not only here in our district, but in New York State. New York State became the 37th state high school association to host a recognized girls' state high school wrestling invitational tournament. In July of this past year, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association announced girls wrestling met the criteria to be considered an emerging sport. At the time, a state committee was formed. In an emerging sport, the criteria is where there are at least 4 teams in 4 or more sections. So our sport is growing. It was starting to grow. And with an emerging sport status means a sport committee can be established and an event may be developed. So they had a committee, they had enough interest to form a committee at the state level, and then they said, well, we need an event. So last year, they had a preliminary event. It was kind of a, let's see if we have any interest. And that interest generated 80 girls from all over New York State to come. Well, that event last year led to the New York State Girls Wrestling Invitational that was held in Syracuse this year on January 27th. There were 456 applicants of interest. 208 girls were accepted. Section 9, our section, had 11 participants, including 3 from Saugerties. There were 16 girls in each weight class. There were 13 weight classes. Savannah Tittleback, our 10th grader, she placed 6th in the 118-pound weight class. So that tells you this is a growing sport. And the amount of energy in that auditorium, in that gym, was amazing. So in 2022, there were 563 girls wrestling in New York State. In 2023, there was an increase of 584 girls, bringing the number to 1,147.
And that was only in the month of January.
So Jillian's going to give you a little quick season recap.
So this season, we had one modified girl, Joelle Luke, who finished her season 10-6. Between JV and varsity, we had 9 girls come out, only 4 stayed. But that still tells you a lot how 4 girls were dedicated to this sport. Starting with the season at Kentucky Athens, held a girls tournament, an only girls tournament, where there were 80 to 100 girls that competed, a lot from more north of us. At the 138 weight class, we took first, and at the 132 weight class, we took third. Competing at a JV tournament in Peekskill, which they held an all-girls division with approximately 48 girls. 4 of our wrestlers competed, each placing on the podium in their weight class. And then this year, at Eastern States, which was held at SUNY Sullivan, this was their 2nd year of holding a all-girls section. And with that, there was a cap at 61 girls, which was represented in 7 sections in New York State. Savannah Tittleback took 3rd in 114, and this year at girls sectionals, which was held at Monroe Woodbury this past Friday, 11 schools from sectionals was represented, and only four sections was competed in 2022. All the Sawyers medaled, including Kira took 3rd in 120, I took 2nd in 132, and your section champ for 138 was Meredith Mills.
You can imagine the rivalry in our house.
Savannah Tittleback competed in boys sections, which was held this past Sunday. She wrestled in 118 and would place 6th, 1 away from the podium, but still competing in an all-boys bracket is very challenging for her, but she pulled through. We would like to give a big thank you for Coach Kapler for really showing the girls that when you do push yourself, you can accomplish great things. And we'd also like to give a thank you to Coach Wickham for your support throughout this season, and especially for Savannah Tittleback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Mike Ivino. I'm here tonight to talk on behalf of the volunteer firemen of the town of Saugerties. Mr. Ball, thank you for replying to my email earlier. I don't know if everybody received it, but you should have received an email from me kind of giving you an overview of what I'm going to speak about. I'm very proud and humbled by our town board. I'm also on the town board. This will be my 3rd year, my first term. We're one of the first towns in the county to pass the tax exemption for firemen. It's a 10% tax exemption on your overall assessment. And I'm here tonight to urge you as a school board to do the same with your part of the tax bill. I've been in the fire department for about 12 years now. I'm an assistant chief of the Centerville Fire District. It's your largest district in the town of Saugerties. We run about 300 to 350 calls a year. We have 60 active members. These guys on a daily basis, let's put it about 4,000 to 5,000 hours a year is what we put into our district just in training. That doesn't account for the hours that we're out on calls. That doesn't count for the time that we put into meetings such as this, or the extracurricular activities such as you see us out with Santa during the Christmas time. We do our food drives, fundraisers to keep the department going. So something as minimal as a 10% reduction on the school tax goes a long way for our volunteers that, as you heard, the pager was going off as we were here for a odor of burning over in Glasgow. It's non-stop for us. So something that small is a huge help for us, especially those who, have dedicated their entire career. One of our members here tonight with us has done this for 50 years and is still active. The fire service is a dwindling service that the recruit and retention is something that we face rather challenging times with, especially in some of our smaller departments. So this is just one of those hopeful little, bones that will keep people around or entice them to want to volunteer for us. Like I said, all of us are volunteer. We get nothing out of this other than the enjoyment to help people.
Kind of like the school board.
So, public service, it's thankless. Been doing it for almost my entire life now. But anybody has any questions, be happy to field them. You have my contact information, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I will turn it over to Mr. Reinhardt for the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Next up is an update on our capital project, and it's been a long time coming, but we'll be sharing wonderful news today about our bid opening from last week.
Good evening. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Superintendent Reinhardt said, yes, great news here. Again, Jim Bouffard with Tetra Tech and Jeff Andrews with PBO. Sorry, I was staring at something else on the notes here, so I sidetracked myself. So great news, and we'll just do the usual rundown through, not sure which one I'm supposed to point to here, the usual allotment of capital projects. So tough to read, I realize, but the biggest things in big bold letters there are the important things. So there's great bidder representation this time, and great bid results, and the total of the low bids was a little bit over 12.3 million, which came in under budget by a little bit, leaves you about $2.2 million under budget. And then Jeff and other members from our team evaluated the bidders the last several days and made sure that everybody's bid qualifications were good. They were competent bidders. They had what they needed to in the bids. So with that, what this is really just showing is kind of the summary of how that plays out. And on the next slide, we'll show a little bit more here about what some of the alternates are. So there were a total of, 13 alternates, if I'm remembering correctly? Thank you. So at the junior, senior high school, some of the ones that were being recommended are the generator and the automatic transfer switch that goes with that. That's what the ATS stands for. As well as some of the spray booth work that's needed. Cahill, there's 4 alternates, one for each floor, to do actually new flooring
for covering. And then at Morris Elementary, there were a couple of alternates. One was for adding cooling capability to the gym, which will also have the stage addition as part of that, and some additional parking, because the addition offsets a few areas of spaces, so it's to recover that elsewhere on the site. So the total of all those recommended alternates is just under 1.6 million. So here you're seeing the whole summary and the snapshot of the base bid plus the alternates. I'm going to stare at this one because I can't see that one well enough. So of the referendum amount, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but again, what it ends up with is after the recommend of award of alternates, there's still a variance, an unassigned fund balance, if you will, of a little bit over $600,000. So that's great news. It may allow something else to happen as we get further into the project, but having a fund balance isn't a bad thing when you're starting a multi-year construction project either. So we've kind of shared this one before, but now we can fill this out with the full complement of what all the prime contracts would be. The one that I highlighted there for S&L roofing, that was previously awarded. There will have to be some additional roofing work done that we actually got cheaper quotes from S&L to do it over the bid prices for a few things. So we'll look to engage S&L on achieving that to get best price for the district. Jump into the schedule?
Sure. Yeah, again, as it's listed up here, we've already gone out to bid. We've received our bids. We've gone through the contractor qualification process that we did the last week. We have issued, and I think it's later to vote on, our letters of recommendation, which pick those low bidders along with some of the alternates that we've talked to the school district, and that was reflected on that slide prior. Anticipation would we do a kickoff meeting with all those contractors beginning of April, and that this summer we'd be in full swing.
So we're marching forward on the anticipated schedule here.
And again, just the listing up here as to which schools we're anticipating occurring starting summer 2023, which ones we're pushing starting 2024. Some of that's equipment time frames that, for example, the switch gear is a 70+ week lead time. So before we can get that going within Mount Marion, we've got to have that equipment in hand. Some of those times, and again, there's a little asterisk at the bottom, because of door frame hardware, lazing some of those longer lead, some of these may push a little bit later in the summer than we anticipated, but we're working with the contractors, and everybody still thinks completion time is going to be that 2024 time frame.
So again, the overall projects, some of these start to roll together now, so we'll update them again as we present this slide, but for now I just still wanted to show them separate. So again, there's a good chunk of roofing work that's already happened this year. There's still some more that'll continue to happen as we move forward with things. Again, already got a couple of other things done regarding the track surfacing as well. And again, the Morris addition was rolled into the bid set, so that was part of what was in the base bid that was in the project. And again, we just talked about the schedule for that. Phase 2, it's on track as we move forward. EPC, I guess not quite as happy news at the moment, unfortunately, but been working with the district, gain an understanding of some of the ongoing issues that have been happening, and finding a path forward for getting resolution to those. So there's a lot of little things at play on that one, but I think the message here is that we're aware of them, we're working with everybody. It's going to take a little bit of time to sort out, and we appreciate everybody's patience as that happens, but it's got to get resolved, and we're here to help with that process. Better news for Ricardi Elementary School for the capital outlay project. So again, that was a continuation of the previous capital outlay. That one is actually going to be in in the near future, hopefully presented for going through a cooperative of piggybacking, as it's known, purchasing. So that one's in process of getting finalized and get that construction underway here. So with that, welcome any questions from the board, but that is good news. Yes, Mrs. Behringer.
I only have 3 questions. Only because I should know this, but spray booth? What is a spray booth?
It's a big giant piece of equipment that lets people actually, it's like a fume hood, only kind of bigger. So it lets paint and stuff.
Okay.
You can do a paint and it
It's like
takes
a
away
painting.
all
Okay.
the other stuff, the bad fumes.
Thank you. Along those lines, the other one was in that same slide. When you say cooling work, you're putting in an AC in the gym?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thank you. I just want to
We
make
just
sure I'm
refer to it
clear.
as cooling, but yes,
Yeah.
air conditioning.
Okay.
Yes.
And then on the EPC, the hiccups that you're experiencing, do they have any impact on instruction or operations?
So I think a few of them actually have had some impacts, and I know the district's been working to try to, minimize what happens there. I mean, fortunately, you've got a great O&M team that have been able to really work with Honeywell to, they're the contractor to really get things buttoned up and under control, but there are some things that I think have impacted instruction a little bit. Namely like noises, that type of thing.
The noise?
Noise issues.
Okay.
Some of the piping, the valves it's called hammering, but they open and close quickly. Water's trying to go through there, it can't, that type of thing.
Okay.
Sounds like a big loud bang.
Thank you.
We're having a face-to-face Thursday at 1:30.
Thank you.
You have in your memo, you list alternates, and then you list alternates. You mentioned that in discussion with school officials, chose not to go forward with specifically the locker room. And can you just describe what that process involves? Is it simply based on, hey, we think that's too much for that work, so we'll do it somewhere down the road, or the need does not match,
Some of it's related to the funding, so part of it, when you added up all the pieces that made up that alternate, it's a pretty sizable chunk, and then it's really vetting with the school district what makes the most sense, what will give the district the best value, and what is something that could be done as a future phase if there's more funds that allow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
More.
Here, my presentation is on preliminary state aid. Basically, the governor's proposal. I'm going to try to break it down for you, decipher it maybe a little. The total in the governor's proposal was $24,736,059, which is showing an increase of $2,564,442, or about 11.6%. About $900,000 of this increase is in the foundation aid. The foundation aid in this calculation is fully phased in. And it's never been fully phased in the past. So it really means that they're giving us the amount of the calculated formula that they've been running for years, but we've never really been receiving what we could do. Here's a breakdown with all the different categories. So we start with the top, the foundation aid. It's our biggest amount. So in the governor's run, it's at $17,456,010. But in that, there was an amount
of $100,000 held out as a set-aside from the total foundation aid, and it's listed down there at the bottom as high-impact tutoring, which is really to say that out of the whole foundation aid, which usually the district gets and we can spend wherever we want it, but this set-aside of $100,000 is supposed to specifically be spent on tutoring. And I'll talk a little bit more about the details of that later. In the next category down, BOCES. So BOCES aid, so what I did with this is, in the proposal, it's just one total dollar amount, but I broke it up because there's two pieces going into this. So we have our regular BOCES aid, which is based on our expenses from the previous year. So I broke that into what is in the proposal as a $1.6 million number. And then the next one down is the BOCES capital aid, which is based on what BOCES we spend. We give BOCES as our share of all of the capital expenses that BOCES has. So this is gone up. Usually we only get about $20,000 or so for their leases. But they have that capital project going on, and so far we've made one payment this year, about $385,000. And then the plan is for us to make a payment in July of about $955,000. So in this proposal, the governor had taken those two amounts together and multiplied it by the aid ratio to come up with that $700,160. But they made the assumption that we're going to be paying both of those payments in cash, which isn't accurate. So we made the first payment in cash because it was $385,000. But since the next payment is almost $1 million, we're going to be financing that with a band, which is a bond anticipation note. So the principal and interest due on that band is what is going to be multiplied by the aid ratio, and that's the amount we're going to get. So it's going to be significantly less than that $700,000. So that total BOCES aid will be a lot lower than what's in that proposal. And then the high tax aid, that stays the same each year. The next category down is instructional materials aid, and that is slightly down due to enrollment decline. The dollar amounts for each of the instructional materials aid, it's been the same for as long as I've been, well, longer than I've been doing this, and that's about 12 years. So the amount per student stays the same, but our enrollment is declining, so the amount goes down slightly each year. The supplemental excess cost aid, that's the same each year. And then transportation, that $2.99 million number is based on what we budgeted this year. But we don't always spend the whole amount of what we budgeted, hopefully. So that is going to be less in my projections or my recommendation. So next, the next two categories, the high cost aid and the private excess cost aid, those are for our special aid placements out of district and including BOCES, and then some of our in-district students that are higher cost. So those numbers in the governor's proposal, again, it's based on previous year's amounts. It's not really based on what's happening right now in the district. So we work with the special ed department and plus our 3 BOCES stack service, and we work together with the students that we have right now and the expenses, and then we come up with a better projection, which will be included in my recommendations later. And then the building aid in this, it shows $227,885, which doesn't include the building aid that's going to be due for the energy performance contract project, which should be closed out in June, and will receive a full year of aid in 23-24. So that actual building aid number is going to be higher in our proposed budget. And then that last one, the high impact tutoring. So on the next page, just a little bit more detail about the high-impact tutoring set-aside. Again, it's included as a set-aside from foundation age. And districts must designate students in grades 3 to 8 that are at risk and provide 2 30-minute sessions. Did I say that twice? 2 30-minute sessions twice a week, if you don't get that. In small group or individual. And it can be done anytime, before school, after school. I think it even said it can be done on the weekends. The thing about it is it has to supplement what we're currently offering. It can't supplant. So we can't use this money in place of other money that we've been using for the same purpose. So it'll have to be in addition to what we're doing. But I know that my group, ASBO, the Association of School Business Officials, has reached out, as well as our state aid planning, and asked the question of whether we can use this in place of some of the federal funding that's disappearing. So if we use our federal funding for, which we do, after school, and we also use it for some of our RTI teachers, if that federal funding goes away, can we use this in place of that for the year that it's given to us? So that question is out there. And next is new UPK aid. So you'll see in the governor's proposal there's an additional $313,957. And this is based on an additional 50 students. They came up with a formula to come up with the 50 students, and at a dollar amount of $6,279. Currently, our UPK aid is $448,382, and that is for 80 students maximum, and that's $5,604 per student. And I don't believe we have any students on our waiting list currently.
Not right now.
So we usually run between, like 72 and 80 or so a year. So I'm not sure if this is funding that we can actually use. We'll kind of have to wait to see how the pre-K registrations go, and then maybe have another discussion about it if it stays in the budget. Since this is just a governor's proposal, so it depends on if the legislative approves it and rolls it into the final. And next, just a couple additional reporting requirements that are proposed. The first is that Division of Budget Transparency Reporting. We've been doing that for a few years, 3 or 4 years now. And the governor is suggesting that we do it for 5 more years. Although the business officials, we're not sure why we do this report. It's based on budget only, and it's building level budget report. And as we all know, that a budget is a budget. It's never what's actually, what actually happens. And each year we report building level expenditures in the ESSA transparency report, which is a federal requirement. So we see that as being more important than this. And I wish this one would go away. The next thing they added was new zero emissions bus reporting. They'd like this to be done annually to August 1st, and there's a couple of requirements and questions in this. Capacity of electrical grid to meet needs, number of charging stations and other components, workforce training to date, number proportion of zero emissions buses currently purchased, leasing, or utilized, number of zero emissions buses utilized by contractors providing transportation services, number and proportion of zero emission buses anticipated to be utilized by contractors in the next 2 years. So I believe this is the state's way of gathering the information on how far we're moving along, or how fast or not fast, to get to their requirements by 2035. So just a couple more reports. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Ms. Barringer.
I apologize. Oftentimes I'm just trying to make sure I have clarity for myself, but also to make sure that the public is clear. UPK aid.
Yes.
Are you saying that the potential is 700,000? You add both the new and the current? Just want to make sure that it's clear that we're adding those two together.
Yep,
And then
we have to have all those students.
Yeah, so now we're looking at 130 students potentially in UPK in the future, potentially. That's if this goes through. As you said, it's a proposed budget right now, but yeah. Yeah.
And only for 4-year-olds, right?
I believe that was just for 4-year-olds.
Up to 4. Okay. And then the other clarification, based on, again, the proposal that's coming forward, it sounds great when you look at that first slide of 2-point-something million additional, 2.5. But based on your presentation, what I'm hearing is 900,000 is really the only increase we're looking at, because everything else is earmarked for something.
Expense-based.
Sorry?
Everything else is expense-based.
It's expense-based, right. And there's no, we can't move those kinds of things around, so when people start coming back to us saying, oh, but you got 2.5 million, no, we got 900,000, potentially.
Yes, and actually they said that they're going to rerun the formula with a slightly higher CPI, so it should be a little bit more than that. But so the formula is ran with 7.9% and it's going to be 8%. And I forgot to mention, I did want to point out, last year about this time, the calculated full phase-in amount was only 17,065,000. So now it's up to 17,456,000, and that was all due to the CPI increase, which is one factor in that giant formula.
Yes.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Ms. Barringer said. I mean, when you look at the numbers and the papers put out 12%, these are expenditure-based revenues. And I think that's, when I talked to Mr. Cotton, we're going to get the 900 whatever plus adjusting to the CPI, but all the other ones we get only if we do the following. So it's not like we're getting an additional bid, 300,000
right.
for this
And,
stuff.
and she just takes, what we've budgeted, what BOCES has budgeted for us, and runs those numbers and projects it out, but that's not really what's happened. It's not always what's really happening.
Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, the one thing I think, and Ms. Barringer, Trustee Barringer makes a good point, sometimes we ask these questions for the public, but I think a fair point to make about foundation aid is that the district hasn't had foundation aid fully funded for, I couldn't tell you how many years. And the fact of the matter is that the fact that it's fully funded right now, there's no effort by the state to look at all the previous years and say, oh, by the way, we're also going to provide you with that aid that we haven't been providing for in excess of a decade or more, whatever the dollar figure is. So it's very easy to see a proposal automatically and think this is very rosy and positive. But the fact of the matter is it might just be the first time in a long time that we're getting the foundation aid that we should be getting. Now, having said that, that comes with a caveat, and that's in terms of the high impact tutoring and the set aside. So knowing that, and I know the supplant versus supplement language very well, it's very, it's associated with Perkins and countless other grant types of opportunities, but did they include any reporting mechanism for that?
Not that I've heard yet.
Great, thank you.
Just a quick question, and this is really just because these are the government's proposed budget and our budget season is just around the corner. When does it kind of become finalized to help you in kind of working through your budgeting projections? And
so what I usually do is take what the governor's given me, but then really I just look at that foundation aid and a couple of the other ones that don't change. And then the ones I did mention, the BOCES aid, the high cost excess funds private, all of those, building aid and transportation aid. And I look at, I project what we're really going to spend and what we're really going to receive, and that's what I include in the budget that I present to you. So the only one I really take into consideration is that foundation aid. The rest I kind of,
you do your magic.
Yeah, I do a better estimate. And then we kind of wait to see what the legislative gives us. Maybe they'll give us a little bit more. Maybe they'll take, put that high impact
back in the foundation aid, and then we don't have to worry about that. You know, we can spend it on whatever we want. So we wait for that too. Sometimes it's a little bit different, but the risk governance pretty much goes the same.
And just for my clarification, what is high tax? What is that?
I don't really know a lot about that, and that one, it stays the same. It's something about this district that the taxes are higher than maybe other parts of the state or comparison to the state. Not really sure. It stays the same, so I haven't really looked at it, but maybe I'll learn something else.
Thank you.
Moving to board member remarks. Ms. Barringer.
Hello again. So I just wanted to highlight, we sent an email out. I think everybody is aware as the BOCES representative that my term is up at the end of this year. They are looking to have a new Saugerties BOCES representative. I am willing to continue to serve, but I just want to make sure it's very clear that it's up to the board to make that decision. It does not have to be a sitting board member. So I'm also, my position here is also up. I have to run again. So even if I run for Saugerties and don't get selected for this board, I can still serve BOCES. It's a separate entity. It's a separate board in a separate district. So that's it's up to the board to decide if they would like me to continue to serve as the BOCES representative for 3 years, or if they would like to find someone else. So I just want to make sure that's just aware and knowledge. I believe it was the end of this month. I thought that they needed to know so that they could, because the BOCES vote, the annual meeting is early April, so they like to try to get those things done ahead of time.
Is anybody interested in filling the position? Mr. Ball? Are you interested in the BOCES position, or?
We're moving from board member discussion remarks to that.
No, I'm adding
I think
discussion. I'm just.
I will say, Jim, thank you, Trustee Mooney. Ms. Barringer, every report she's given, I feel, that I've been informed and I've been up to date, and quite candidly, certainly if that's an interest area that she still has. Do I have an interest? I have an abiding interest in BOCES, and I have for a long time. I'm a huge BOCES supporter. There's not a question. Having said that, I don't feel that I need to be a representative for our BOCES board when we do have someone who has a great level of enthusiasm for that.
Yeah, I agree. They won't let me on.
Yeah, that is true.
No, they really won't. I work in a component district, so they won't allow me on the board. So I'm very comfortable with
So,
later
Ms.
on.
Barringer, do we need a resolution?
I think we do. I think because because we need to be able to, Saugerties has to then put forward back to BOCES your nomination. Now, just to clarify, your nomination from Saugerties is not a done deal. It then goes to the BOCES, all the component districts, and we get all the component districts and the 8 can have their vote.
So,
so they all say yes or no to Saugerties.
Why don't we continue with the board member remarks, and then we'll make a resolution after that.
That sounds good. That sounds great. And in terms of things that are happening at BOCES, very quickly, just to let you know, we are still doing the superintendent search. They have, I believe, the top 3 or 5 that they will be looking at for interviews in the near future. So hopefully we'll see some changes happening there, but everything else from what I'm hearing still sounds good. We've got some great work happening. I just went to the policy committee because, again, it's a separate district and a separate board, so I have to serve on a minimum of 2 committees for BOCES in addition to the BOCES or board meetings that I do here. And their policy committee, and I just wanted to share, there is some really great work coming out of their policy committee on their attendance policy is really moving more to an engagement policy. And I'm so excited on the amount of work that's happened from both the staff, the teachers, and the students there to talk about engagement versus sitting in a seat and getting credit for attendance. And so there's some I'm hoping to see that come out more so, because I believe there's some good work that can be taken elsewhere as well. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Rosa. Mr. McClure. Mr. Mooney. Ms. Gage.
Just quickly, I'd like to thank Mr. Reed for his presentation and the wonderful video that was done by our students. That was just so great to see, all the students that are involved in that, so I thank you all. I loved all the new courses that Mr. Reed spoke about, but especially the sign language. I know that's been just an after-school activity, so I'm really looking forward to that class being offered and all the other classes if we approve them. Kudos to all our student athletes, the bowling team, the basketball team, and the wrestling, both male and female. It's hard to be a student and a student athlete, so kudos to all of them. And Amy Mills, thank you, and Jillian, and was it Joelle that came and spoke about what's happening with girls wrestling. That's so exciting to hear, and the growth is just amazing over the last year. So thanks for giving us all that information. And I don't know if Mr. Ivino is still here. Thank you for coming and speaking to us about the tax exemption for the volunteer firemen.
Mr. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. I echo that's final statement there. Thank you to Mr. Ivino for bringing forth this the proposal for the volunteer firemen's exemption. We appreciate any time the public comes and speaks to us, and certainly appreciate seeing relatively pretty well attended meeting here today. So that's nice. And congratulations to the lady wrestlers. It's not something that I had the advantage of seeing or being a part of, and I say that from the standpoint of having two of my children that did wrestle, but it's great to see. We saw that it was coming a few years ago, and as our speakers indicated, it started out slow, but the timing is right, and the timing is now, and it's an exciting development in probably one of the more exciting sports that there is. I was able to attend senior night wrestling event, so that's always a nice opportunity to not only see the show, the wrestling show. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's widely regarded and quite renowned at this juncture. So kudos to Mr. Wickham and Coach Zarella, Coach Kapler, all of our students, and the seniors whose names do currently escape me. I didn't write them down, but did get to see them, and congratulations to those folks as well. This month I was able to attend a retirement dinner for Chuck Corey. As Krista pointed out, they're in the process of filling that position, and I was very pleased to receive the invitation as a school board member to this retirement dinner, but in my mind I attended as someone that has worked with, in one form or fashion, knows Chuck Corey and has for some time, and I think that BOCES, I wish the BOCES board a great deal of luck, because Chuck Corey's grace and patience, and what I perceive as some of his innate leadership skills are certainly surely going to be missed by me as an educator in Ulster County. A couple of other things that I've been a part of. I've written some letters to our local state politicians. As you're well aware, the governor's budget has come out, and there's a couple things that I think every school board member, I can't speak for every school board member, but every school board member certainly probably sees things in a state budget like that that are areas of particular interest for them, and something that they'd like to see advocated for or advocated done. So for instance, I wrote a letter to some local politicians. I believe that we should see, and I'd like to see our governor support universal free school meals for children. I'd like to see the BOCES reimbursement rate increased from $30,000 that was established in 1992 and hasn't changed yet. And while I won't take the time to go into all the details as to why that's important, the bottom line is everybody in this audience can probably agree that we have major deficits in qualified candidates for countless jobs in the nation, many of them blue collar, many of them new collar, and BOCES is the way that these positions and this training and these opportunities are going to be filled. So to speak to our politicians and try to make sure that they understand the direct connection between something like what appears to possibly be a very small budgetary item, but then the overall ramifications for some issues that they themselves are very concerned about, such as employability of students. So it's the reason that I felt the need to highlight something like that. And Ms. St. Amour mentioned the transition to EV buses and the reporting required from the districts to the state. It's another issue that I've discussed with some local politicians, simply for the fact that it's an aggressive time frame and it's an aggressive agenda, and the devil is always in the details. And so how do you get to those details? Well, you drill down. You drill down with questions, and you ask people in the field, and you get some experts to chime in, and hopefully, you come out with a better final product. So I'm happy to be doing something like that. I don't know quite candidly to what end, what level of success letters like that may or may not have, but it's certainly something that I see as important and relative to the way I see my role as a board member. And finally, I'll just share, all of our new board members, every one of us has to take certain courses that are prescribed by New York State in order to be a board member, Essentials of School Board Governance and Fiscal Oversight. And this is the first year that they offered those courses online in a hybrid type of a model. I was able to take those courses online. I found the courses to be really quite good. And I'm happy to say that I'm done with those courses, Mr. Toman. And and I would tell any board members that if you haven't taken those courses, offer to do the online version, because it's at your that's obviously according to your schedule that you can do that. And there's a lot of value in there. There's a lot of good stuff that I think it's worth revisiting, regardless of how long you've been on the board. Thank you, and happy Valentine's Day to my wife. Thank you.
We'll do board president remarks. Thank you to Mr. Reed for your presentation. As you were talking about the courses, I think a lot of those courses give students hope, and hope is an actual construct. Students have to believe that they can be successful, and I think you and your staff bring that to the table. As the guidance presentation was going on, I live on a street called Neighborhood Drive. I know that Neighborhood Drive has produced more student guidance counselors, school counselors than any other street in Saugerties. So shout out to those who live on Neighborhood Drive. I think that there's been 3 from there that I know of, and one across the street. On a separate note, the world is upside down. We're seeing a lot of stress out there. We're seeing an increase in suicides, especially among adolescent girls. Mr. Reinhardt sent a letter out last week about a potential incident that occurred that they were investigating. Sunday was a particularly remarkable day in Saugerties. I was coming out of church and a state trooper whizzed by me going about 70 miles an hour down Bridge Street. And I thought, what in God's name is going on? When I left and drove down 9W, there were at least 20 police cars from 3 different jurisdictions in the parking lot of Sue's restaurant because a guy had waving a handgun going into blocks of bagels. It turned out it was a pellet gun, but you think, why would somebody do that? Well, that wasn't enough. A little later on in the afternoon, a guy took a pickup truck and a trailer and blockaded 212 across the Thruway overpass. And the Thruway was closed because they feared that there were going to be explosives on that truck or trailer. Again, we live in a tough world, and a lot of people are hurting coming out of the pandemic. There's economic crises, there's families in disarray. And not to paint it all bleak, but I think it's important in our community, I believe our community can rise above, that if you see an individual who's hurting, say something. Ask them if they're okay, ask them if they need help. If you have a student or a parent that we're dealing with here and something isn't right, report it to somebody. That's how a lot of things get solved in Saugerties. I think we're not like a lot of other districts that you see. We care about one another and we lift one another up, so I would urge us, if we see someone who's hurting, bring that to somebody's attention and let's deal with that rather than when you get that far to where a traumatic event occurs. And with that, I'll end my remarks. And I'd like to amend the agenda to add an item H2, which would be the election of our BOCES board rep. So I'll entertain a motion first to amend the agenda to add item H2.
Motion.
Motion by, I'll give to Ms. Bellerosa first, and Mr. Second?
Sure.
Okay. Any discussion on amending the agenda? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now I'll entertain a motion to nominate Krista Barringer as our BOCES board rep. Motion by Ms. McClary. Is there a second, Mr. Ball? Any discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I will make a motion for us to go on break as item 9. We'll take a quick 5-minute break.
Whenever you're ready.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item J1, 2, 3.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mooney, is there a second?
I just need to pull out 3A. I'm sorry, J3A. If we just pull J3A out of that vote, we'll do that separate.
Oh, okay. We had the one number down for that. So I'll entertain, let me restate that. I'll entertain a motion for items J1 and 2. Ms. Villarosa, is there a second? Yeah. Mr. Ball? Any discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 3A, I'll call for a motion. Motion. Motion by Mr. Mooney, second by Ms. Villarosa. Discussion? None being heard. We'll make this a roll call vote. Taylor, you call the roll, please?
Robert Tobin,
Yes.
James Mooney,
Yes.
William Ball,
Yes.
Krista Barringer, abstain. Christine Bellarosa,
Yes.
Susan Gage,
Yes.
Raymond McClary.
Yes.
Motion carries 6 yes, 1 abstain.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for 3B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. Moved by Ms. Villarosa, is there a second? Ms. Gage, discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will entertain a motion for K1, A, B, C, D, E, and F. So moved by Mr. Mooney, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Villarosa, discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion for item 2A, K2A. Mr. Wall, was there a second? Second by Ms. Villarosa, discussion? None being heard, tell us this is also a roll call vote.
Robert Tobin,
Yes.
James Mooney,
Abstain.
William Ball,
Yes.
Krista Barringer. Yes. Christine Bellarosa,
Yes.
Susan Gage,
Yes.
Raymond McClary.
Yes.
Motion carried 6 yes, 1 abstain.
I'll entertain a motion for K2B and 3A, B, and C. So moved by Mr. Mooney, is there a second? Second by Ms. Gage, discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Business office recommendations, I'll entertain a motion for item L, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So moved by Mr. Mooney. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Villarosa. Any discussion?
I just had a quick question, and that's just in regards to the extracurricular classroom activity accounts. Yeah, as I reviewed the report, there are several clubs or accounts that haven't had balances that have changed since July of 2020. And they're small balances, but is there a process in place where these account balances get rolled into some other account or get dispersed in some manner? You know, what happens, or do these accounts stay there forever.
I believe those accounts are open, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Moore, if the club reconstitutes itself, right now there might be not enough students, let's say, for a Spanish club, but if students want to come back and say, we want to be part of that, that account is there for them, rather than reopening it again.
And we haven't had a lot of activity due to COVID, so I think they're just getting back into it. But we would look at them and I talk to the extra classroom treasurers and say, hey, what's going on with this? And they'll say the club is active, they just haven't done anything for their money. So we talk about it, and then if it's a club that isn't active, they're not being active, they're not doing anything, they're, nothing, then the money would move to the student council. Thank you.
Any other discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item M, board action discussion items. I'll entertain a motion for item M1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Moved by Ms. Gage. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mooney. Any discussion? Mr. Wall?
I want to state very clearly for everybody involved, because I've been at one policy meeting and I've seen a lot of the work that's being done, and I appreciate that, so I apologize. This is simply a question about the use of the word policy in number 4, school safety plan, second reading, and it might be a minor nothing, but in that policy, there are several instances, and I'm not looking at it right this moment, but if you do, there are several instances where it says that we will, by policy, we will have policy and procedure. We will have policy and procedure. We will have policy and procedure. I can pull it up very specifically. But our school safety plan, second reading, this is the policy, right? And I want to make sure that we're using very clearly the correct operational definition for the word policy to distinguish between procedure, to distinguish between, the practices. So if we take a look, for instance, at that policy, that is the reading, and if I can do it quickly enough, I'll just try to highlight for you what I'm talking about. If you go to the second page, where it begins to discuss the district school-wide safety plan will include but not be limited to, and has A, B, C, D. D, it says the school safety plan will include policies and procedures for contacting appropriate law enforcement officials. It then goes on to state several other times, I, J, that the plan will include policies and procedures. Now, I understand the plan has procedures and practices for how we're going to work and how we're going to operate, but the plan itself won't have policies within it. So if I'm getting too, very specific about that, I'm happy to be told so, but a policy is really the purview of the board exclusively. It is not something you would typically find in a school safety plan.
Well, I think in the school safety plan, it's talking about the plan following the district policies, so it's not deviating from it, so it's in line with what the district policies are. That makes sense.
So it's reflecting back on any other policies within our operation that would...
Let's say, for example, if we have a policy that in the event of a student at risk of parent will be notified, that safety plan is going to cover that policy to make sure that it's adhered to. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I believe for this one in particular, there's education laws as well as rules and regulations that require this plan and kind of detail require the language as it's written. I think this one in particular is one of those ones that if we went back to those sections, those education law sections that are referenced on the last page, I think you'll find that it's almost verbatim to what's being required from the state in terms of we have to have a policy that dictates that we're going to have a plan, and then separately we have a plan that we have to approve, but this is the policy, is my understanding, and I think Dan might know more so on, because this all comes out of Erie One BOCES.
Yeah, so it's recommended from Erie One BOCES, it goes through our attorneys. I can't open the policy right now, I lost internet connection to see, get the context of it, but this one is highly governed by regulations, and there are other policies that reference things that are in this, that have to be in the school safety plan as well.
So for instance, is there a policy that directs how we're supposed to contact parents, guardians, or persons in parental relation?
So we do have policies in reference to certain circumstances for that.
Okay, so I'm going to thank you for your answers. I just want to point out that, again, I can't deny my previous experience. I've seen the word policy misused a number of ways, and it oftentimes does lead to organizational confusion. So that's for me, just wanting to clarify how we're using that word and how it's being referenced in this going forward.
Any further discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion for item 9, the Deputy Superintendent Employment Contract Resolution. Moved by Mrs. Gage. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McClary. Discussion? Ms. Bell-Morrison?
Yes, I just wanted to make a couple of points here, and this is no reflection on the individual that's a party to this contract, but more to the point that I have a concern about the position itself. And you know, what I hear in the district, you know, in the community quite often is that our district is very top-heavy in administration. And that's something that I've typically defended, specifically to surrounding the central office personnel, because from my corporate experience, you know, I look at central office as being sort of the C-suite in a corporate world, where you have the superintendent who's the CEO, you have the business official manager who is the CFO of the district. We have over 300 employees. You need to have a director of HR and human resources individual, and we're in the business of educating students, so we definitely need someone in charge of curriculum and instruction. And I've always felt that the district was right-sized in that fashion, and that, you know, that this district, given its declining enrollment, I'm not sure I understand the need for a deputy superintendent position. I could certainly support an assistant superintendent position for human resources, but I'm not quite, I have difficulties supporting a deputy superintendent position.
Anyone else?
I would like to state before we vote, just for the record, that I plan to abstain from this vote. I have reasons for doing such, and one of those is simply that as an individual board member, I do not feel that I've had sufficient time to review this resolution and all of the elements of it. And I'm going to state very clearly as well that my decision to abstain is not remotely a reflection on the personnel. That is to say, Mr. Ursig is a part of the resolution here in the recommended action on the agenda, and it is in no way a reflection on Mr. Ursig.
Ms. Barringer?
Yes, and I just wanted to share that I really appreciate the resolution coming before us. I think the clarity of our administration is key, and coming from a BOCES, which is currently looking for a superintendent and has 2 assistant deputy or assistant superintendents, and not really knowing where the lineage is in that structure. I think this is making it very clear as to where our structure is and where the chain of command lies in the event that a superintendent was not available. So I think you know, when we got rid of this position a while ago, it was done with a desire to restructure at that time. There's no change to finances in this look at and change in our structure. It just makes it very clear and also helps us to adhere to some other state mandates that are coming down. So I think it's a good focus for us moving forward, and I thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'll call for a vote. It's going to be a roll call vote, Kelly.
Robert Tobin,
Yes.
James Mooney,
Yes.
William Ball,
Abstain.
Krista Barringer,
Yes.
Christine Bellarosa,
No.
Susan Gage,
Yes.
Raymond McClary.
Yes.
Motion carried 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain.
Call for a resolution on item 10, the memorandum of agreement for coaching and extracurricular stipends. Motion by Ms. Bellarosa, is there a second?
Second.
Second by, was that Mr. McClure? Mr. Mooney? Any discussion? Call for a vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I will call for a motion on items 11 and 12.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mooney, is there a second? Ms. Gage, discussion?
I just had a couple questions. These sound like really good courses, and I appreciate Mr. Reed's presentation on them. Just for my clarity, what is the impact that these courses have on FTE? Do we need to hire new personnel to cover these courses, or will this impact our budget upcoming?
No. What we do is we do course offerings. The students sign up, and then the guidance goes through and sees what classes are going to run based on the staffing we have.
Okay, so we have staff that can cover, say, a psychology class or an astrology class. We have staff on hand that we don't need to hire.
A lot of these courses were written by the teachers, right, James?
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 13, the capital project bid awards. I'll call for a motion. Motion by Mr. Mooney, is there a second? Mr. Ball, discussion? None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item N, board discussion items, election districts and May budget vote. Clarification, is this for polling places or
Yes.
just? Okay, I will call for a motion.
It's a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let me enter the discussion. I think we had a number of emails that we all received regarding this, and it seems that if you're waiting out, the citizens responded with way in favor of keeping the polling places as they are and not consolidating at this point. So my recommendation is that we leave this, we tune up the survey at the election and take the place of the community. I think it's like $3,000 in saving. We were sure that we'd have more poll workers. So my personal feeling is to leave things like they are for right now. Ms. Barringer?
I absolutely concur. We also received a communication from our district clerk. I was going to say Jerry, and then I was like, no, it's not appropriate, and then I can't think of the right name.
It's from Jerry, but it's from Brad.
So, in regards to affidavit ballots, we received, as was pointed out, 62 affidavit ballots net last year that had to be double checked to ensure that they were accurate. And they were all because of voting in the wrong polling place. Along those same lines, I mean, I understand that it's also a cost to us to have to continue to check and recheck, but along the same, wanting to ensure everybody has that opportunity to vote, even if they go to the wrong polling place. I personally would also like to see us continue with the affidavit ballots. I understand it's something we're not required to do based on the discussion in that memo, but I just think that 62 is almost the same number of votes that we're getting out of Mount Marion, so I'd rather make sure that everybody has an opportunity to vote, even if they're going to the wrong place. That's just a personal.
Yeah, I think the issue with the affidavits is it creates a lot of extra work for people who tabulate the votes. So I know they would prefer us if we keep the polling places they are, redirecting those people to the correct polling place. And, you know, I hear your concern about Marion, and I think maybe we could look at phasing that out. We need to do, we could probably do a more effective job of directing people to the correct polling place by running communication as to what that is, and then say, okay, this is, you know, the last year we're going to do this. We expect, and, you know, try to make everybody happy, even though that's not always possible.
Yeah, along those lines, and it occurred when I believe it was the Board of Elections changed, redistricted, in particular Mount Marion, and people were sent to Glasgow. So then people thought they're supposed to go to Glasgow Firehouse or to their where they vote for the Board of Elections, but no, they're supposed to vote in Mount Marion. So there's a huge confusion going on specifically in one area of our, and I'm sure other areas as well, but they in particular, and in that when that happened that year, I specifically talked to a gentleman who said he went to Glasgow, got sent back to Mount Marion, and then got sent back to Glasgow. So I hear exactly what you're saying in terms of trying to tell people to go to the right place, but, and especially when we're also crossing sometimes train tracks and a lot of other, you know, barriers to voting. If we can make voting, you know, wherever you are, vote. Like, try to help people to vote. But I do hear you about trying to phase out.
And I asked for my assembly person, you know, I punch in my address and it tells me who it is. So you would think that there's something similar, but I don't know how much of an encumbrance that would be to create that. But it would be nice to move to that direction with the technology that we have. Maybe that would be a project for one of our technology classes. Any other discussion on this?
I'll just echo your sentiment, Mr. Toman, and your sentiment, Ms. Manager. I think it's a complex system, and there's a lot of layers to it. And I think, you know, I know the work that I've done in my career, it's there's always a tendency to try to take complex systems and say, hey, we can reduce this. We can reduce this to fewer steps, and we can make this easier. And sometimes that's the right move, and sometimes there's other layers of complexity that suggest maybe we should just leave it the way it is. So I support access that I think, you know, is pretty much, for me, the primary issue. Access to polling sites, and if we are having trouble and worrying about numbers, and if we are worried about affidavit ballots, you know, we can put our heads together and come up with some brainstorming, hopefully in ways that are not just reductive and reducing it to its simplest components. Thank you.
If no one else has any input on this, we'll move to committee reports. Audit committee.
I have no report.
That's a first. Facilities, Mr. Mooney.
Well, I mean, you all heard the good news. Our bids came back under what we expected them to be, so we were able to pick up some of the projects that were put on the back burner. Our next meeting will be Wednesday the 1st at 5 o'clock.
Policy committee.
I apologize, wasn't at the last meeting. I'll check with Dr. Persick and give a report what I missed.
All right, public recognition. If there's any of the public left and they wish to speak, please approach the podium. I will then entertain a motion to recess into executive session. Moved by Mrs. Gage. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Ball. Discussion. None being heard, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to go into executive session. We're going to reconvene to adjourn the meeting, but we don't anticipate any vote on any items.
Yeah.
executive session.
Oh, really?
I do.
It's late.
It's late.
There is a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ball. Discussion, none being heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Second by Ms. Gage. Discussion, none being heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Good night, guys.